Good evening. I now call to order the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for the City of Apache Junction. Today's date is May 9th, 2023. The time is now 7 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Rudy, please.
Chairman Hanchey.
Here.
Vice Chair Gage.
Here.
Commissioner Cantwell.
Here.
Commissioner Shanebeck.
Here.
Commissioner Begeman.
Here.
Commissioner Barker.
Here.
Commissioner Callan.
Here.
7 present. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rudy. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda and minutes?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the agenda and the minutes from April 11th, 2023.
Do I have I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Rudy, can I get a roll call?
Commissioner Callan.
Yes.
Chairman Hanchey.
Yes?
Vice Chair Gage.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantwell.
Yes.
Commissioner Shanebeck.
Yes.
Commissioner Begeman.
Yes.
Commissioner Barker.
Yes.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rudy. All right, public hearings. We have presentation, discussion, public hearing, and consideration of P-22-126-PZ, a proposed rezoning by W.W. Clyde / Blunt Contracting of approximately 15 acres, generally located near the southeast corner of 12th Avenue and Vista Road for businesses, park and plan development, B-4/PD, general commercial, B1 to business, park and plan development, B-4/PD to construct a new office building and to allow for on-site storage of large vehicles and equipment.
All right, good evening, Commission members. My name is Kelsey Shatnick. I'm a planner on staff, and tonight's presentation for you is a plan development rezoning request by W.W. Clyde / Blount Contracting. The subject property is located near the southeast corner of Vista and 12th Avenue. The current zoning on the property is both B4PD, Business Park by Plan Development, and B1 General Commercial. And the request is to rezone the entire property to B4PD in order to construct a new office building and allow for the outdoor storage of vehicles and equipment. So here's a zoning map of the property. As you can see, just to call out again, this northeast section is zoned B4PD and the remainder of the property is zoned B1. You have residential properties to the north and to the east. You have commercial properties to the west, and generally to the south you have Old West Highway as well as some industrial zone properties. Just to give a little bit of background information on this site, Blount Contracting originally in 2015 purchased the site at 1353 South Vista and constructed their current office building. The northern portion of the property, which is currently zoned B4PD, prior to 2014 was a non-conforming auto wrecking business, and in 2019 it was rezoned to B4PD for a commercial condominium project, which was never constructed. And the southern parcels down here have been historically vacant. I think it's important to note that this project has kind of been a long time coming. W.W. Clyde merged with Blount Contracting in 2020, and it was around that time they started to inquire about expanding their operations to the entirety of the site. So here's the proposed site plan for the project. I know it's a little difficult to see, so I'm going to kind of walk you through some key aspects. Highlighted right now is the existing office building, which is currently on the property. Their newly proposed office is going to be north of the existing building. This contains both office space as well as warehousing space for the to work on their vehicles and equipment. To the north is their proposed outdoor storage of construction materials. On the eastern portion of the site is parking for large vehicles and equipment. They're proposing a fuel station on that larger southern property. And then they're proposing a new driveway, which will also include a decel lane for the primary access for large vehicles and equipment. Here are the proposed elevations for the site. As you can see, multiple colors and materials are being used on the new building. These were chosen to complement the existing building on site. Here are the proposed landscape plans for the property. The most important things to note about these plans is that along this northern section along 12th, they're proposing a 20-foot landscape buffer. And along this eastern portion, they're proposing a 15-foot landscape buffer, both which are larger than the originally 10-foot required landscape buffer in our code. Here is the portion along Old West Highway. This is to just show they will continue that landscaping along both sides of the newly proposed driveway. In terms of public input, a sign was posted at the site. Notices were sent out to property owners within 500 feet of the subject site, and the case was advertised in the newspaper. A formal neighborhood meeting was held on February 1st, 2023. The final participation report was included in your packets tonight. And staff was contacted by one individual regarding the rezoning request. So in order to help mitigate the concerns heard by neighbors throughout this review process and at the neighborhood meeting, staff has worked closely with the applicant to revise their originally proposed site plan. All of the conditions of approval were included in the staff report tonight. I'm just going to highlight a few of those for you. The first is they were planning to construct an 8-foot high wall to screen the outdoor storage on site. This will run pretty much the perimeter of the property, leaving out the parking for employees. The next is the relocation of the proposed fueling station. So the fuel station is proposed on the west side of this newly proposed driveway. Originally, it was on the east side. And staff heard concerns regarding potential light pollution, noise pollution, as well as any, possible environmental impacts being close to residential properties along that eastern property line. So staff proposed relocating it as far west as possible. As you can see, the applicant has complied with this request. Relocating lighting away from residential homes. Originally, lighting was shown on the photometric plan on this eastern property line. Staff recommended relocating those lights to a more central location in order to help reduce light spill. As noted earlier, there will be a new point of ingress-egress along Old West Highway. This will be the primary point of access for large vehicles and equipment whenever possible, again, to kind of keep those large vehicles as far away from those residential properties as possible. The next is staging vehicles and equipment the night prior to reduce backward motion of vehicles and equipment outside of standard business hours. It was a concern of residents that throughout all hours of the night they would hear beeping. This was due to the backup motion of vehicles as a safety precaution. So staff is recommending staging those vehicles in a way that throughout the night outside of standard business hours that you're not going to have to back up that equipment to eliminate the beeping. That is done in part by this pass-through parking. So trucks will be able to come up, park, stage overnight, and then continue forward and not have to back up to reduce the beeping. The final to note is the removal of the existing billboard. Throughout the review process, staff noticed there was a billboard on site, and the applicant has agreed to remove that as a part of this process. So with that, staff recommends approval of P-22-126-PZ, subject to the conditions of approval found within the staff report. There will be a City Council work session on this item on June 5th and a City Council public hearing on June 20th. That concludes my presentation for this evening. I'd be happy to answer any initial questions that you might have, but the applicant is present and they do have a presentation.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Mr. Chair,
Frank?
is there going to be an 8-foot wall along Old West? Is that the plan?
Yes, so let me, so I know it's kind of hard to see.
Will it
my
be an
cursor.
8-foot wall with a break for the road?
Yes, so yeah, the wall is right here, and then there will be landscaping, so there will be significant buffer.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioner?
Chair.
Commissioner Cantwell?
In the proposed building, it looks like there's going to be 4, I'm assuming, maintenance bays. And those are going to be primarily during the day. They would be used at night only if absolutely necessary.
That is my understanding, but I will defer that to the
Okay.
applicant.
And the type of equipment that is being stored probably should not require idling overnight, or maybe that's a question for the,
Yeah, I will defer that as well.
okay, that's fine.
Yeah, Mr.
Commissioner
Chair.
Gage.
Um,
Commissioner Gage.
I'm curious about the fuel station. Is there a current fuel station on the site?
There is not.
There is not. So the new fuel station will have above-ground or below-ground tanks?
I will defer that to the applicant to kind of explain how that all looks.
And also, I'd be curious about what sort of regulatory authority is watching the spills and mishaps with the fuel station. So that's a question for them as well, I think.
Any other commissioner? Thank you very much,
All right,
Kelsey.
thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, Commissioners. My name is Todd Leslie. I'm with EPS Group, and we've been working with Blount on this proposed rezoning package and the proposed improvement plans for the property. So thank you for the presentation. It was very thorough. Much of what we've prepared is very similar to what you just saw. Again, we're here to answer any questions you might have about the operation. We've got some representation from ownership here as well, and we'll just go through our brief presentation here. So as explained, 15-acre site, proposing to rezone to be more consistent across the existing property. Just a quick reference on the current zoning and the proposed zoning. And site plan, as we just reviewed. I'll actually leave this up. Our last slide in here is just to ask any questions you or the public may have.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
One of the things in your presentation, one of the items was there would be no work late outside of business hours except in case of an emergency. I'd like to know what you folks think constitutes an emergency.
Sure, I'll invite Jonathan or Dave.
Hey, good evening. David Dean with Blunt Contracting and WW Clyde. So what would it constitute an emergency in our case would be a project maybe that we were working late nights on, that we had some equipment go down or something like that, that we needed to get repaired because we're in the middle of something. We also do underground utilities. Sometimes that work is required to be done at nighttime. And if we have something go wrong with that, you know, a tie-in or something like that with utility work, we might have to do something in the evening. We don't normally work at night. That's not our standard operation, and would rather not want to. So it would really be a rare circumstance and something that we were doing in the shop or something, or in the yard at nighttime.
Thank you.
Fuel station, I guess. I'm glad to hear there's not an existing one, so we're not worried about grandfathering old permits in. How is it gonna be built? Above-ground tanks, below-ground tanks? And who are you regulated by? Do you have a national pollution discharge elimination system permit? What kind of stuff is gonna protect the community from spills?
Yeah, so I'm not 100% familiar with the current design yet on the fuel station. My thought is that it's going to be above ground. We usually, you know, when we do tanks on our sites and things like that, we'll do dual wall, you know, above ground tanks with containment systems around them so that there aren't issues. But I think that design is probably still in the works on exactly how that's going to be.
It's gonna go, okay.
How do you refuel vehicles now?
We do have a small tank on site that we do fuel just our semis with. All our construction equipment gets fueled on the jobs that they're on by a mobile refueling station company. So that's how they do it right now.
Gotcha.
The type of equipment that you're using probably does not need to idle overnight?
That is correct. We don't have, we don't transport with semis or anything except for our construction equipment. So that would only be turned on whenever we're mobilizing that equipment. We don't have anything that would stay on overnight in the yard, on the premises.
What are you guys' working business hours?
So we'll work, the office hours are usually, like 7 to 5, 7 to 6. Some of the yard and maintenance and mechanics will work a little bit earlier, especially in the summer. As you know, it's hot, and so most construction companies work earlier, usually from sun up is what they'll do.
So what hours is that, do you plan on?
In the yard, we'll plan, our plan is to be, 5:36 in the summer, but in the winter, obviously, that's later.
Anyone else?
Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
So, this being a public hearing, I now open it to the public. Would anybody from the public now like to speak? If so, please come up one at a time to the microphone, state your name and address.
My name is Christina Boggs, and I'm a neighbor of the company that's here. And I see that they did make a lot of changes, which is good. I didn't know about the deceleration
Can you please
lane.
state your address as well?
2080 East 14th Avenue. So I am directly, well, I'm like 1 acre lot over. So I hear everything. I know what goes on. I didn't know about the deceleration lane, so it did kind of take noise from one side over to the other side. Because as those trucks decelerate, they'll go by the houses that are on the road, which my house is just a few houses over. But my biggest, I guess a couple of my biggest concerns is the first notice. My understanding only went out 300 feet, and it should go out 500 feet because it's a general or a commercial thing. I could be wrong on that, but I know a lot of neighbors that didn't get notified on the first meeting. That was only 300 feet. My second thing is the lights they addressed. The Plan Development Overlay District, part of that is that it can coincide with what's already there. And you have houses on basically more or less 50%. There's about 30 homes that are pretty close to that. And the noise that they have is loud. And in the proposal that we received, they asked for 24/7 access, and it's loud. And I can't agree with that. As far as the noise ordinances go, legally, they can't do it. I hear them say that they're not gonna do it, but what can they do? Are we gonna have to call the cops every time if they're going over the noise ordinances at nighttime because we can't sleep with the noise? It's loud equipment. I like the 8-foot wall, that's good. I think it's just the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week that they asked for the access in their request to us. And then also, when you rezoned that plan development, part of it is that the adherence to the strict provisions of the zoning district is not required in order to ensure that property values of adjacent properties will not be reduced. So that means that maybe they could come in and be super loud, and then my property value goes down, and I have no repercussions with this company, with it zoned the way it currently is, I do. So that's a couple things from our end. I'm not against it. I wish it was just a little bit different, maybe not 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I do see they made a lot of changes on that. If I knew it was gonna improve my property value, that would be a good thing. But if they come in and they make a lot of noise, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's gonna be a lot harder to sell. That's our concerns, I think, as neighbors. Overall is noise, which the 8-foot wall helps for sure. But then that they could decrease our property values, and there's really nothing we can do about it with that zoning change. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Shauna Scott. I live directly across the street of 12th Avenue.
Can you
I
please
was-
state your address?
My address is 1950 East 12th Avenue.
Thank you.
Yes. I have reached out to some members trying to lay out the reasons why this is really not a good idea for our
Can you
established
speak into the
neighborhood.
mic?
Yes, this is not a good idea for our established neighborhood. First off, they are not complying with the current general plan. This states that anything over continuous 10-acre parcels would have to require a general plan amendment. And the parcels that are up there in front of you are 18 acres. Well, 15 acres, I believe, is what they proposed, because they eliminated one of the parcels on their proposal. Another issue that we run into is 24 hours of operation. This is a huge overreach, and right now as residents, we are subjected to the crews arriving at 3 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes they leave at 6, 7. Random trucks come through down 12th Avenue, which is a 2-lane residential street. The noise is unbelievable, and an 8-foot wall is nice, but they are not accounting for elevation changes and the way that sound carries. I work from home and I work from an office, and when I am at home on a Zoom call and I am having a decibel reading on my cell phone of 85 decibels, that is a problem. The noise carries. These are not small equipment trucks. These are large, oversized loads that some require pilot cars. And they are currently using that property to store everything. In addition to that, where that office building is, it's beautiful. It's 2 stories and it looks right into everybody's backyards. We are existing in that area and we are trying to welcome business into that area. However, we have something that we voted on, and we would ask that you keep them to the standards of the general plan. The expansion for industry and heavy equipment is designed to be constructed right next to the new U-Haul that we all love, right off the freeway. That is the intent, and that is essentially the size of this office building that they're proposing on our residential street. There are quite a few reasons why we do not want this. And if you had 24/7 operations of a business of this size right out your back door, it would be a problem. And I would genuinely ask that we find a way to move industrial projects like this one that are this ambitious and would be good for our community to the proper locations of growth. Were there any questions about what life is like where we're at or other concerns that I should be pointing out?
Ma'am, we're not allowed to engage with you.
Oh, I understand.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you all allowing me to take the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak?
Good evening. We got a piece of property.
Sir, can you please state your name and address?
My name is Mark Renner. The address is 1127 South Vista.
Thank you.
We're in favor of the project. We think it's a solid company. I like what I see there, the changes they've made, and I like the upgrades that they're doing there. I'm pretty sure that they're going to be as kind to their neighbors with noise and late at night activities as they possibly can. But we're in favor of it. We think it's a good company, and we like what they bring to the neighborhood. That's all I got to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Heather Howard. I live at 1069 South Vista. The address that the gentleman before me just mentioned, I believe is the lot right next to me, and it's vacant. There's nobody there. We have the lady who was up just before, Shauna. She is just on the other side of that vacant lot, right on 12th Avenue. So there's nobody between us. We bought our house on Vista just exactly a year ago, and I had no idea when we moved in that this was going to be going on. I take my dogs out at 5:30 in the morning, and I'm hearing backup beeps from the trucks. I'm hearing from inside my house, and I'm 3 lots away. I hear the roar of the trucks and, the rumble of the big trucks. So I don't believe, I don't have a lot of information. I don't know a lot. I haven't done a lot of research, but what I do know is that I didn't buy a house in this neighborhood to have to share it with big trucks and, lots of noise. When my husband and I bought this house intending for it to be our forever home. We're going to retire here. We want this to be, this is our dream. And we were kind of disappointed when we actually moved in and discovered what's going on. So as far as the noise alone, I don't think it's a good idea. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
Jonathan B. Singer, 437 South, 2920 West, Lehigh, Utah. Is it a breach of protocol for me to speak for the applicant right now? Or is this still public?
Public.
So I should come up later?
You guys were already given your chance. I'd have to go back through and reopen.
I see.
Well, if I may, I think he's allowed to speak, call the public. I'm sorry.
You can speak as public, but not
Yeah.
as a representative.
Correct.
I see.
Yes.
Understood. Thank you.
So,
I don't know that I could represent the public because I don't.
Well, no, I think you're, if I may,
yeah,
he's allowed to speak.
okay,
Yeah, even though he's the part of the applicant, I think he could still speak.
okay. You're the attorney.
So, COVID imposed all kinds of restrictions, and we learned, I think the public in general learned that construction is a critical industry, and so we didn't have a lot of the typical COVID restrictions imposed upon the construction industry. Because if we want running water and sewers, then someone has to do that. And so therefore our request for some kind of leniency in hours of operation isn't intended to be an overreach, but it's intended to be a practical use of people's time to make sure critical infrastructures are operational. Nobody at Blunt wants to work 24/7. They have families and lives outside of work. In an ideal world, they would work their 40 hours and go home. But to keep critical infrastructure operational, sometimes it takes more than banker's hours to make that happen. We are very cognizant, in fact even sympathetic, to the complaints about noise. We paid for an independent sound engineer to come to the site and conduct a third-party study. We demonstrated to them sampling of, representative sampling of noise that we create, and their independent conclusion was that we are well below the decibel levels required by the noise ordinance. Beyond that, we've also structured our site to ensure efficiency and flow of vehicles, to make sure that we can minimize backup alarms, which, by the way, are exempted by the noise ordinance. But in an effort to be a part of the community and good neighbors, we've taken up a lot of space on our site to make sure that we have forward-flowing vehicles to reduce, if not altogether limit, backup alarms. We've also invested in a very sizable building with bays that can close with doors, where we can do loud operations inside the confines of a building, which requires it to be as tall as it is so that we can fit our trucks inside it and do loud work. I recognize that it makes it taller than an 8-foot fence and can be seen from the sidewalk. We really do have an interest in not just compliance, but neighborliness in an effort as we provide ongoing critical services for our critical infrastructure.
Thank you.
My name is Paul George. I live at 2038 East 14th Avenue. I'm right across the road. I mean, right there. I don't hear the beeping inside my house with the TV off. My dogs might, and if they do, I let them out, they bark at them. Okay, then they come back in. Really, it's not a big deal, and the way they've moved everything, I don't see a problem with it. I'm sorry to say. I mean, for everybody else that has a problem, I'm sorry, but thank you.
Thank you, sir.
James Bowler, 1950 East 12th Avenue. I do find it a little funny that these guys are talking about compliance when I personally went over there, and the first time that I called the police because of a noise restriction at 3 o'clock in the morning, they asked me if I went over personally and talked to them, which I did. And then 2 nights later, you would have thought they were delivering a space shuttle to that property. Lights, not even kidding, probably 10, 18-wheelers, woke all my dogs up, wakes up my fiance. None of us can sleep. And what they're asking for is forgiveness on what they've already been doing, is the problem that I have with it. They're wanting to rezone to something they're already breaking the law on, and the police couldn't do anything for me. They're like, no, we cannot. And Shauna had reached out to the mayor, and they told him to start finally administrating and enforcing code compliance, and they still wouldn't do it. At some point, they said they had a permit. Whether that happened or not, I didn't see it. If they did, then okay. But what they're doing is operating completely out of every single code and law that you guys vote in, and it really bugs me. Because if I was doing 100 miles an hour down the road, guess who's going to jail? These guys can do whatever the hell they want, and apparently it doesn't matter. And I apologize for dropping the H word. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak at this time? Again, anyone else? All right, seeing none, I am hereby closing out the public hearing. All right. Then we move on to discussion and public fact finding. Discussion.
Mr. Chair, my opinion is that it was a mistake to allow that company to locate there in the first place. We have got a lot of houses going into the west and to the east of this site, and to think about turning Old West Highway into this sort of facility, I don't see it. Putting an 8-foot block wall to greet people coming in on Old West is not very conducive to a welcoming situation. Their whole plan is just in the wrong place. The business is fine. I understand how hard that business is. Construction is 24 hours a day, whether you want it to or not. But they're going to have to come in there at night. It's going to happen. And between that, rousing the neighbors, an 8-foot fence facing the entry to town here, a lot of heavy equipment is going to be going up and down Old West Highway to go to this facility in front of all the new houses that are being built, all the new development, residential development. This is the wrong thing in the right thing in the wrong place. I think if it were in an industrial zone, fine. Part of the reason that's zoned commercial along Old West is so we have storefronts, not an 8-foot brick wall with a driveway through it leading to a fuel station. I'm sorry to say, but I think this is just a completely bad idea. The 2-story house, we shot down a development, the city council shot down a development that was trying to get a variance so they could build 2-story townhouses overlooking somebody's backyard. That was years ago, and I remember that case very distinctly. And they weren't allowed to do that because they overlooked somebody's backyard. Now we're going to allow a facility here that's going to basically invade the privacy of anybody within a viewing range. That 8-foot wall isn't going to do anything for that 2-story building. So I plan to vote against this, and I think it's a bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak at this time? Commissioner Combs.
I agree. It's a beautiful project. It's amazing. They did great stuff, great work to work with what we wanted them to do, but I think it's also in the wrong location. Because I've been in contact with some of the neighbors over the past, I think, 6 months or so of what they've been going through and the complaints. And there's nothing they can do about the noises that they make. It's construction, it's big trucks, I understand. And it's unfortunate, but it's backed up, I think, too close to all these houses, and then what's gonna go in over here on the other side of Tomahawk. And an 8-foot wall, I don't think that'll do much. You know, I don't know if we're allowed to put up 12-foot wall or a 15-foot wall. That would obviously definitely help with sound, but I think it's in the wrong location, you know, which is unfortunate because they're invested and, you know, they got a great job they got to do, but I think it just might be in the wrong location.
Chair. Okay, I'm going to disagree with the last two opinions. I have been around this type of equipment for most of my career, so I'm familiar with it. Yes, some of it can be loud. I think that the transferring of the equipment to coming in and out on Old West will actually improve some of the situation. Getting that off of 12th Street would be good. There's going to be some late night activity. Hopefully that's going to be minimal. But given the type of equipment that they're moving, there's going to be a certain amount of that. Some of that can only move during the day. Some of that has to be moved at night. The maintenance can be enclosed. So yes, if we had an industrial park that could handle this, it would be better in that environment, but I think this is also well within the grounds of a B4 area, and we're trying to get things developed along Old West, so I don't see a real big problem with this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cantwell. Commissioner Barker? I know that look.
Well, I think that some of us are overlooking the fact that this exists. These vehicles are going in and out now. And they will continue to go in and out if this is vetoed. That won't stop that traffic at all. So to mitigate the traffic problem, having the egress off of Old West will help. The two-story building is pretty darn far from the residential on the map. I have a difficult time with judging that distance, but it's certainly not right across the street. It's set back quite deep into the lot. Yeah, I don't like the wall on Old West. I do not like that at all. I would prefer a lower wall there and maybe a larger wall up into the property to kind of cut off. I see where the parking spots are for, I presume, large equipment, maybe the wall in there to wall that off. But I hate to see an 8-foot wall on Old West Highway. I truly hate it. It's unsightly. It tends to give somebody passing by the idea of a prison, perhaps, or something just as unworthy of the beauty in that particular area. But the rest of it, I mean, it's there. It's going to be there, and it's going to stay there. It's not moving anywhere. So if they can mitigate that traffic problem by pulling them on off of Old West, that's a good thing. If they can, they are now aware of all the sound problem. They have heard it here. They will hear it again at the city council. They will hear it again at the next city council meeting. They will hear it over and over again. And if they are not going to comply, I have a feeling there's going to be big problems out there after it being heard in public so many times. So that's something that they need to work on, is some kind of compliance for this noise problem. But other than that, it's there. It's going to be there.
Mr. Chair? It is there, but this is going to expand it.
Yeah,
This is going to
it will.
quantifiably increase the noise, the traffic, and it's going to put a lot, even though they're using Old West, it's going to put a lot of heavy equipment on Old West,
Yeah.
where we're building residential areas. We're building houses east, west, and across the street.
You know, we have looked at this area and the area on the other side of Old West for residential for years and years and years, and nobody's been interested.
But it's happening.
Builders are not real impressed. We've got some further east, absolutely. We've got some further west, absolutely. This particular area has not been a draw for residential at all, for one reason or another. I don't know why. I don't know what the problem is.
I'm not saying we have to build residential there. I'm saying it's surrounded by residential.
Well,
And that kind of
on
traffic is not going to
Two
be,
sides, yeah.
it is not going to be appreciated by the new people moving in, and that's why I feel it's in the wrong place. It's being built in
understand that.
in an area that has residential development going all around it, and now we're going to put more heavy equipment on Old West by taking it off at 12th. And I don't see that as a good idea.
Okay, I see your point.
I have
Mr. Cantwell?
I have a question. Rudy, it's a question for you, I think. The development to the west across Tomahawk, which was going to be a couple of hundred units, that's a walled facility, isn't it?
6-foot wall?
Yeah.
So, you know, as far as the wall on Old West, all the residential areas on Old West already have walls, or will have walls.
I think you're talking about the residences at the southwest corner of Broadway and Tomahawk.
Yeah.
Yes, it will have a perimeter wall, but they don't actually front on Old West Highway.
No,
They front on Tomahawk, they front on
Right.
Broadway, but there's.
Because we were trying to keep that buffer for Old West for business and commercial development.
Yes, the properties along Old West Highway are zoned
And
commercial.
this is a business commercial development, which is what
This-
we're trying to promote along Old West.
But it's business, not commercial.
Well, same difference.
Well, no, commercial to me is storefronts.
Okay.
This is a fueling station behind an 8-foot wall right off the highway. That to me isn't commercial, that's business. That's industrial business. That's gonna cause a whole lot of different traffic than commercial would.
Would you like to speak?
Okay.
I sympathize with the people that live around there. And then I know it's been really hard watching that land get developed. Because some of us been around since there weren't any homes out there. And aside from Mr. Shanebeck saying that this is a business, not commercial, I think his definitions are a little askew.
May well be.
I'm glad to see that a company in this town is doing well enough that they can expand. And yes, there's going to be some noise. But as it's pointed out here, the structures are 120 feet away from residential zones. Our noise ordinance is very conservative. And the times that it's in effect are very conservative. With these easement coming off Old West Highway, I see a lot of traffic being rerouted from into the residential neighborhoods, especially the larger vehicles that they're planning on using. And we have a problem with filling up our business properties. In fact, we have a bad habit of converting business properties into residential properties. I know we've had it happen several times since I've been on this commission. And I don't like it because it does take away from people being able to put a business in an area where it is suitable. We convert these commercial properties into residential properties, and we have no choice but to have businesses in residential areas. Doesn't make much sense to me. But I think this plan is a beautiful plan. I think the people that have put this together and the city staff have done an exceptional amount of work and come up with an exceptional plan.
Thank you. Mr. Gage?
I concur. I think we need to encourage commercial development. It appears as if the developer has gone to quite a bit of effort in their design to address these issues. I have to say the point about this being in the wrong place may be apt. One of the proposed conditions that we have in front of us is standard hours of operation between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. And when you're outside of that, you're going to be subject to the noise ordinances of the city. So you guys are about to invest a whole bunch of money to develop this. If you can't stay within those noise ordinances, as Robin said earlier, there's going to be some issues. So, you may want to take a deep breath and make sure you can do that if this is approved. Sounds like you can. You've done the study, but there will be a lot more activity, in the future. So, I don't know. With that said, I am in a place where this is zoned a commercial area. You've got to the west some auto works, and I know they make a lot of noise. And then, of course, the greenhouse doesn't really bother anybody. But we need to encourage commercial development in our community, I think. So that's kind of where I'm at.
All right, guess it's my turn. Overall, looking at the plan, I think it's a win-win for the city. It is an existing business. It has been there, operating, doing this type of work. Yes, they're going to expand. With the expansion, they're going to do great improvements around the site. They're going to put in landscaping, walls. I think the landscaping, once it matures more, it will help with the noise buffering. It's zoned, the height of the building and everything, it meets the area. It's, you know, there's nothing wrong with the height of the buildings that's going in. The height of the building that's there now meets zoning. The road that they're building and everything, it's gonna improve the area. Yeah, we're gonna have more traffic because there's gonna be more work, but for what they're putting in, I think it'll ultimately relieve traffic flow that they see now. The 8-foot wall in the front with the elevation of Old West Highway and the way it sets back, I don't think it'll be that bad. You see a lot of the residential stuff that we have with walls, it's only 2 foot higher. And the way it sets back, and you got all your landscaping and everything there. I think it'll look a lot better than what it does now, especially being maintained in the future. You know, we have noise ordinances and they have to comply with them. You know, that's what our noise ordinances are. Therefore, you know, we have zone enforcement. They have to comply with all this. I think as a member of the community, the way they've redesigned things, they want to be a member, and they've gone out of their way to make this plan work with the neighbors. I think overall it's a good plan. Is it ideal? Is it perfect? I don't think there's ever such thing as a perfect plan, but I think it's the best that we can do. And as neighbors, we have to work together. So I think it's a good plan. And I'm in support of this. And obviously, we're still a community that wants to go with dark skies and everything, and I think we've made sure it's going to comply with that. So I think this is a win for the city. It's a strong company, and they're going to provide more jobs for our community, and hopefully that'll also bring in more residents that live in our community and provide a betterment for our community. So ultimately, I'm in support of this.
Mr. Chair, one just by the way, aside, one of the members of public brought up the point that this did call for a general plan amendment, which it is part of this particular motion that will be made one way or the other. The general plan amendment is part of that. So I just wanted to point that out.
Correct. All right.
Do we know if those bays are on the south side of the building?
I believe.
Here's that they're drive-through bays. 'Cause
Yeah, they're on
the picture has
they
doors.
should be
on it.
north-south from the orientation from what I got.
So they'll come in and go out.
Is that correct, Sydney? North-south?
Chair, that's correct.
All right, thank you. Which again, does not face the majority of the residents, and it's pretty centrally located within the site. All right, any other further discussion? Move on to finding of facts. Do I have a volunteer to read the finding of facts?
Sure. Okay. As required by Apache Junction zoning ordinance, a plan development request may be approved by the city council after consideration is given to 3 different criteria. The criteria is outlined in the text. That a better design cannot be achieved by applying the strict provisions of the underlying zoning district. Yay or nay?
I think we have a great design. I don't think they could improve it.
Well, and I think they are following the strict
I do too.
provisions. I don't see any deviation.
They're exceeding in most cases.
Yeah. Okay, 2, strict adherence to the provisions of zoning ordinance is not required in order to ensure health and safety and welfare of the inhabitants of the proposed development. Again, I think they are following strict.
They are. I concur.
3, that strict adherence to the ordinance is not required to ensure property value of adjacent properties will not be reduced.
I don't think they'll be reduced.
I
Well, but they are following the ordinance,
think they are.
so it's kind of a non-point. Yes, do we go down to the rest of it for the
Yeah,
general
finding of fact
plan
finding.
amendment?
Yeah.
Okay, whether the amendment proposes a land use designation that the land use map does not adequately provide optional sites to accommodate.
Agreed.
Agree.
Whether the amendment constitutes an overall improvement to the general plan will not solely benefit a particular landowner or owners at a particular point in time, and is consistent with the overall intent of the 2020-2050 general plan.
Concur.
Yep.
Whether the proposed amendment is justified by an error in the 2020-2050 general plan as originally adopted. This is not the result of that error.
It is not an error.
No. Whether the proposed change is generally consistent with the goals, objectives, and other elements of the 2020-2050 general plan.
I think it is consistent.
Okay, and whether the proposed change is justified by a change in community conditions or neighborhood characteristics since the adoption of the plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The use, yes. Whether the amendment will adversely impact a portion of or the entire community by A, significantly altering acceptable existing land use patterns, especially in established neighborhoods.
No.
No.
B, significantly reducing the housing to jobs balance in the planning area.
No.
C, substantially decreasing existing and future water supplies.
No.
No.
D, replacing employment with residential uses.
No.
E, requiring additional or more expensive improvements to infrastructure systems and/or proximity to municipal facilities and/or services than are needed to support the prevailing land use, and which therefore may impact the level of service for existing and proposed developments in other areas.
No.
No.
No. A long-winded thing that had nothing to do with it.
Exactly.
F, increasing traffic without mitigation measures on existing roadways beyond the planned level of service and that negatively impact existing or planned land uses.
No. Stop.
The mitigating measures are there. G, affecting the existing character, i.e. visual, physical, and functional of the immediate area.
No.
H, increasing the exposure of residents to aviation-generated noise, safety, and/or flight operations.
No.
You haven't got any airplanes, right? Okay.
They put in the airport there.
I, materially diminishing the environmental quality of air, water, land, or cultural resources.
No.
And J, significantly altering recreational amenities such as open space, parks, or trails.
No.
Nope. Okay. May I make a motion?
Yeah. Well,
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission recommend to the Apache Junction City Council the approval of case P-22-126-PZ, a planned development rezoning request by W.W. Clyde Blunt Contracting, represented by Joey Gimbett of EPS Group Incorporated from Business Park by Planned Development, B4PD, and general commercial, B1, to business park by planned development, B4 PD, in order to construct a new office building and to permit the storage, maintenance of construction equipment and materials on the 5 properties located near the southeast corner of 12th Avenue and Vista Road, and a minor general plan amendment of Pinell County Assessor parcel numbers 103-19-023A, 103-19-0300, 103-19-029D, and 103-19-0550 from commercial to light industrial business park, subject to the 7 standard conditions listed in the staff report and the 13 project-specific conditions also listed in that report.
Okay, I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, Rudy, roll call,
I'm
please.
sorry, Mr. Chairman, who was the second? There, Mr. Bateman. Thank you. Commissioner Barker,
Yes.
Commissioner Callan,
No.
Chairman Hanshi,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gage,
Yes.
Commissioner Cantwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Shanebeck,
No.
Commissioner Begeman,
Yes.
5 in favor, 2 opposed. The case will move forward with the commission's recommendation of approval. City Council work session on June 5th, City Council public hearing on June 20th.
Thank you, Rudy. All right, so, and do we have any, let's see. No new business. No, no new business.
There's some old business, Mr. Chairman?
Yep. Yeah, old business, sorry, skipped that. Old business, presentation, discussion, and update for case P-23-15-AM. A proposed text amendment of zoning ordinance article 1-7, parking, loading, and circulation regulations to allow 1 additional recreational vehicle with integration horse trailer designed with the intent of transporting equine and residential lots with at least 1.25 gross acres. And then, we're gonna combine these?
They're
Yes,
two
that is
separate
indeed.
items, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
they're
Okay.
two separate things.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Commission members. My name is Erica Hernandez. I'm a planner on staff. This presentation is to discuss the results and staff recommendations for a proposed text amendment for recreational vehicles. Recently, there's been a request among residents and city council regarding horse trailers with living quarters on horse properties. Currently, only 1 RV is allowed on residential properties, single-family residential properties. On December 13th, the Planning and Zoning Commission issued a direction to staff to research and provide a recommendation for the definitions for recreational vehicles, trailers, and the location RVs may be parked on the property. On the 14th of February, a brief update was provided detailing a preliminary findings on definitions. Staff found that the city utilizes nearly the same exact language as the ARS, the Arizona Revised Statutes, and they defined recreational vehicles as a portable camping trailer, motor home, a park trailer or a park model, a travel trailer, and a portable truck camper. Now, the city does not currently have definitions for trailers. Apologies about that. In researching recreational vehicles in the surrounding municipalities, staff found that in most municipalities, the location in which RVs are to be stored are in the side or the rear. Also, most municipalities are not specific on the number of RVs that are allowed on properties.
And there's no mention of trailers with RV combos. Now, because the city utilizes much of the same language as the ARS, and per the ARS definition of a recreational vehicle, a trailer with living quarters is considered a recreational vehicle. And most of you know, you've been here for a while, that the city has had a long history of residents using their single-family residential lots as RV storage lots. So the limitation of one RV on the property is to avoid that occurrence. With that, staff recommends adding an exception for the number of RVs allowed on allowed on horse properties, specifically properties with a minimum acreage of 1.25 acres gross. Okay. To allow one additional recreational vehicle only with an integrated horse trailer. Okay. So because the surrounding cities, most of them utilize the same language that we do for the location of RVs storage, staff recommends not changing the language as well. All right, that's my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Gage, or Vice Chair Gage, sorry.
I have neighbors who run kind of a horse boarding businesses.
Okay.
And, you know, I drive by their properties and there are probably, let's just say 10 of them, 10 horse trailers, and I haven't stopped to look if they have residents in them or not. How is that affected by this
So I
change?
believe for horse boarding, it is required that they have 5 acres.
For RV camping, they would need a greater acreage limit. Horse boarding properties typically require a minimum of 2.5 acres and a conditional use permit. And basically, the way the rule is written is they can also store the horse trailers of people who are boarding horses at the facility. And theoretically, there shouldn't be more than 1 horse trailer per horse being boarded. Those are, and that is in a different part of the code, under the equine regulations.
Okay.
So they're horse boarding properties, properly licensed and with conditional use permit horse boarding properties have their own set of rules.
Okay,
In this
so we're not gonna,
We're not changing those rules.
gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
And even though it has the living quarters, it would not affect them.
Right.
Because it'd be considered a horse trailer still.
Right. Now, in order to have RV camping, then you need a minimum of 5 acres and a different type of CUP.
Right.
Right.
So currently, no one is allowed to live in an RV in a single-family residential district.
Correct. Commissioner Cantwell?
Okay, we're dealing with RVs, but we also have other use trailers. Are they all considered one group, or can you have one RV and unlimited number of other trailers?
So trailers without living quarters don't currently have a limit.
Okay,
So the staff is recommending to not include any other kind of trailer with living quarters as an exception, in addition to the recreational vehicle.
okay, because I think the original question here was, is a horse trailer that happens to have some living quarters on it considered a recreational vehicle? And the issue at the time was, those are not licensed as recreational vehicles, those are licensed as trailers.
I will have to double check on that. I will double check on whether or not they would be licensed as a recreational vehicle or a trailer.
Yeah, because, pardon? They
That
are
would be through the
licensed as
DOV.
trailers, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so with this, if they, with the language that you're proposing, that would then be included as a recreational vehicle.
That's correct.
Okay.
A horse trailer with living quarters, correct, would be a recreational vehicle.
Okay.
So you wouldn't be able to have two of them, say if you wanted to have two different nice horse trailers on your property?
That's right. So you can have a regular recreational vehicle and then one additional trailer with living quarters, but not two trailers with living
So you
quarters.
couldn't have a his and hers if you needed to have a his and hers?
But you could have, you could have a fancy RV and then you could have a horse trailer as long as it doesn't have living quarters.
And
No,
you
you
can
could
have,
have one.
yes,
It says you can have one in
You can have
addition.
one.
Right.
one additional only.
On a horse property, but if you're on a non-horse property,
Right.
if you're, okay, right now.
Well, if you got an acre and a quarter,
But
which is a.
even on a smaller lot, you're allowed one recreational vehicle and whatever trailers you can put on, right?
Right, that's,
So you could have a 45-foot recreational vehicle, and you could have a 40-foot horse trailer that doesn't have living quarters.
that's right,
Yep.
that's right.
Or right
You
now,
got
you
it.
can have one of these horse trailers with the living quarters on a smaller one. Right now.
That,
Because it is considered a recreational vehicle. That's
right,
Yeah.
yeah, but you couldn't, okay, go back. You can have a big fancy recreational vehicle and a simple horse trailer on a residential lot. If you have a horse trailer that has living quarters, then that is considered your only recreational vehicle
On a residential
on a
lot.
residential lot.
Yes.
You couldn't have a regular recreational
No.
vehicle and a
No.
horse trailer with living quarters.
No.
Okay.
No, you can only put your guests in one thing when you live in residential area. When you live on a 1.25 acre, then you got two places to put people. Come on, let's get real.
I want to make a point, though, is that nobody's supposed to be.
No,
staying
they
there.
aren't. They aren't. It would be nice to have that right in the ordinance.
What are we designating as living quarters for the purpose of this?
So that would be like kitchen facilities, bathrooms.
What if it doesn't have a bathroom, is it considered living quarters?
I think if it has.
Commissioner Chair, it's also sleeping quarters. It's really based off of sleeping quarters mostly.
If it just has sleeping quarters, then it's considered?
That's right.
Okay. Is it just basic sleeping quarters? Okay.
So you can have an RV and a horse trailer with living quarters on 1.25 acres.
That's right.
Yes.
Gross, too, so gross acres.
Anyone else?
Yeah, who was that?
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut, as I am not gonna get this any more confused than it is already.
Don't.
Was it Queen Creek I saw on there where it said unlimited?
So, that's right.
Because I think
So-
out of all those communities, we, at least Old Queen Creek, we most resemble Old
So-
Queen Creek,
So that depends on the size of the parcel or the zoning district. So smaller parcels only allow one.
None were depending on the zoning district.
Yep.
Not specified, not specified.
But Eric, a Queen Creek, even though they may not limit the number of RVs you can have on a property, do they have a prohibition on using them as dwelling units?
I do have that information here, 1 second.
No need to look, Erica. I know that quite well. So you cannot live in an RV in Queen Creek, just like our regulations here.
That's county, isn't it, as well?
Oh, yes, that is really a regulation across the board, across the valley, which is consistent.
Right.
And given the lot sizes in some of these new developments, I don't know how you'd ever put two
Yeah,
of these things
really.
anyplace in. You wouldn't have room for one.
Commissioner Canwell, that's a good observation. Most development that has seen across the valley doesn't really even facilitate the ability to have an RV on site.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I did have, there's some really small print on one of these pages about, it says a city-approved perpetual parking easement/agreement for off-site, off-street parking shall be executed by the parties and recorded in the county recorder's office. Is that what we want to do, or?
I think that is referring to shared parking agreements. Yeah.
That's a county thing that has to,
Well, no, it's a, we also have that provision in our zoning ordinance, but I don't think that would affect this particular issue.
okay,
Yeah,
all right, so that's not something that got changed, that's been in there for,
correct.
all right. Sorry, that just kind of go to the county to do something.
Good luck.
All right, I think we're good. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we're on to 23-279, presentation, discussion, and update for case P-23-16-AM, a proposed text amendment of zoning ordinance article 1-7, parking, loading, and circulation regulations regarding requirements for guest parking, electrical vehicle parking, accessibility parking, motorcycle, and bicycle parking.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Planning and Zoning Commission. So tonight, my presentation is also regarding Article 1-7. This will be the fourth time that we've had this kind of discussion, so it really is just kind of a cap on the different discussions that we've had. Thus far, we've reviewed and hammered out different details in terms of the parking amendments that we're looking at and any potential changes to the parking regulations themselves. As we've worked on this, you know, we've made incremental steps just as we've addressed the different things. Next time we see this, unless if there's any major changes that require further amendment tonight, would probably be at the public hearing where we'd actually have a vote regarding the text amendment itself. Now, our plan regarding that, kind of to answer a previously asked question, that would probably be, we're planning on that being combined with the text amendment that Erica just presented, just because having one amendment for Article 1-7, as soon as we just reconcile all the different, you know, little code items, her text amendment had, you know, shifting some letters around and things like that just because of the merging of sections. And so one ordinance amending this section will be provided and presented to be voted on as long as the actual content itself is all reconciled and approved by you. And that's why we've been going through this work session process, just to make sure that when we do provide the actual ordinance, it won't require much changes or picking apart the different pieces. But in as much as the motive and intent behind the different amendments has taken us to this point, that's why we've been presenting them differently rather than combining these work session items. But looking at that, just as a brief review, these are the things that we've looked at and thus far approved, as well as a brief update regarding our last discussion. With guest parking, we're looking at an additional 0.3 guest parking spaces per dwelling unit. The ADA accessible parking, we have just included the ADA standards, the Americans with Disabilities Act standards, within the zoning ordinance, just to be clear, so that as a resource of information, everyone is aware of what the requirements are. We're not necessarily changing any of those requirements, but we have just added additional language since our last meeting as well, just so that it is certain what applies where, how many parking spaces should be expected. But we're not actually changing any content regarding what's required. There's the motorcycle and motor scooter parking, as that was determined as a need both for safety and as well as a matter of flexibility for a developer. The idea being 2 motorcycle or motor scooter parking stalls to be included out of every 75 parking spaces. Again, with bicycle parking, as we previously described, proposing a requirement for that just to meet the needs of the city. And regarding the electrical vehicle charging spaces, the number previously discussed and determined of the 1 electrical vehicle charging port parking space, specifically now after this discussion of at least level 2 capacity for every 250 parking spaces. And I'll get further into detail about that. We've done further research and work, communication with SRP, just to determine what would be best for the city as well as the different resources available. I have included the prior presented slides for information, but this is all the content that we've already reviewed and discussed regarding guest parking, the accessible vehicle parking requirements, and just making sure that that language was clear. As was noted with the motorcycle and motor scooter, the bicycle parking, getting to the electrical vehicle parking requirements, since this was the topic of our main discussion at our last meeting, we have specifically gone in and gone through the information that SRP has provided, as well as the industry standards regarding the different levels of a charging of these charging stations. As was previously discussed, the recommendation is to have at least an electric vehicle charger of level 2 capacity. That was always the intent, but it needed to be made clear, as was noted. Language is specifically specified of at least level 2 capacity because some developers may choose to insert a level 3 charger that is of a greater cost, and I'll get to the individual details in the context. One of the things that we also discussed is, the potential of putting extra conduits or extra electrical lines underneath. In terms of, staff looked at this, making the discussion, and in terms of taking all the feedback that we got from the Planning and Zoning Commission, we have inserted it as a recommendation. But however, we don't believe going beyond this minimum requirement that we believe is there to solve a problem is necessarily what we want to do right now in terms of, a developer will determine for themselves out of market conditions or of their own individual goals. They may upgrade the site more or put in the different electrical lines, but in terms of city requirement of you must take upon this cost, we are not making that requirement at this time or a recommendation for the requirement. Instead, it is a recommendation for a recommendation, that being within the code itself so that, they see it, they're aware of it. But this, going back to the original intent of including this electrical vehicle parking requirement, the idea being is that right now there's so little electrical vehicle parking within the city that some minimum inclusion needed to be included so that we had at least a baseline preparation for the future. We don't believe that would be burdensome, and I have gone in, my next slide. We have, at the advice of one of our business owners and residents who attended our last meeting, we were looking at different incentives, things that were brought up in the last discussion, and he had recently actually installed electrical vehicle chargers just in the last couple months. And he informed us that SRP had a lot of incentive programs themselves available, and so I reached out to SRP representatives asking about their program, and they indicated that they offer a rebate. They've been doing this for years. Per charge, for a level 2 charger, for every charging port, a commercial business gets a rebate of $1,500, while a multifamily, government or nonprofit, but in this case we're mostly focused on the multifamily, would be rebated $4,000 per port. A port being you could have one charger and then you have 2 different cables, and each of those cables qualify as its own port for its own rebate. The level 3 charger, being much more expensive, also has a higher rebate. For a commercial project, a $15,000 rebate or a $20,000 rebate for a multifamily project. Now, in my conversation with them, they have added an additional program to areas that they consider to be either disadvantaged or impacted by pollution or by not having a lot of available infrastructure already. And it does happen that there are certain sections of Apache Junction that qualify for that. So that's an extra $1,000 for the level 2 chargers and an extra $5,000 for the level 3 chargers. As a matter of context, just breaking down the 2 different charger types, the cost for a level 2 charger ranges from $1,000 to $7,000, according to SRP's estimations. Now, what that means with that cost range is that some of these rebates can cover the cost of the entire charger. A level 3 charger is much more expensive. They have estimated the range between $50,000 to $150,000, and that's part of the reason why, while it charges faster and, for a customer would be more convenient, it is more of a cost burden on a developer, and that is why it's not a matter of a requirement, but it's a matter of market interest. It's an option. But these rebates do help cover a lot of the cost and the burden. In terms of talking with SRP and the different options available, the actual manufacturer of an electrical vehicle charging station often has different cost revenue sharing requirements, options. Some people install electrical vehicle chargers as a free service. Some install it as a commercial opportunity where they sell electricity. SRP doesn't specifically get involved when it comes to the selling of electricity or how they manage the charger from that's in the ground. They just, send the electrical bill to the property. But there are different options that some manufacturers have, such as having, they'll sell ad space, so return some of the money as part of the lease agreement to the developer. There's different things like that, but as far as the actual infrastructure goes and the installation, which is the base thing that this parking requirement would address, there is a rebate offered that covers a significant amount of the cost or even the entire cost of the actual charging station. And we believe that that helps diminish the burden of even this minimum basic requirement.
It's quite a range of efficiencies.
Yeah.
4 to 19 kilowatts per hour. No wonder it's the difference between 1,000 and 7,000.
Yeah, and to be frank, the DC fast charger, what we call the level 3 fast charger, has a higher capacity need and burden. So in terms of the electrical infrastructure, it's something that to install that is more than just putting the unit in. It requires having sometimes a separate line or an electrical line, and getting into a lot of electrical science that I'm not an expert in by any means, but
It's a lot of juice.
yeah. A level 2 charger is typically already run on it's a similar wattage to, as I put, like a residential dryer or an oven. But as soon as you get to the level 3 charger, again, there are, a lot of companies that are interested in putting this in places in terms of, again, don't have a crystal ball for the future in terms of how this might look, but that would be the most, I guess, gas station-like option, but it is a much higher cost of infrastructure. Plenty of people, and developers, I should say, have elected to do so, but it is a higher cost burden, and we're not making the requirement of it by any means at that time. But there are options, there are rebates, and we wanted the public to be aware of that as well. Any developer, just anyone watching and keeping tabs on this discussion. So as was noted previously, if the prior text amendment case regarding the RV horse trailer parking is good to move forward for a public hearing, this will move forward with it at whatever time that is determined. But we will see you soon at that, unless if any additional amendment is required at this time, or fix or change or update to what I've presented thus far. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Sure. So you're recommending EV chargers, you're not going to require them?
As part of a staff recommendation, it is the requirement for a minimum of 1 electrical vehicle charger for every 250 parking spots. However, just the baseline recommendation is the installation of any further electrical lines, or because one of the prior discussions was, because it is a current market need, something that people look at of, in order to prepare for the future, they install an extra electrical line. And so one of the discussions was, is staff or within the city, are we going to require that extra electrical lines? And we are not at this time recommending anything beyond just the baseline 1 for every 250 spaces that we believe solves an issue, rather than just trying to influence trends or anything like that. Again, we're not necessarily sure how the technology develops or how often it will be adopted. However, there is a current need, and that much must be addressed through this minimum baseline requirement. And that's why we believe this is the recommendation we're making.
Not to split hairs with you, but I disagree with the need. We've got 4 stations over here at the MGC Center. And because nobody could give me any information on how much they're used, I called the Parks and Rec Department this morning. And I was amazed. Average usage, since those have been installed over there, is 48 hours a month. Each one of those stations is used, on average, 12 hours out of a month. And recently, it cost the city $17 and some change because it wasn't used enough to generate a positive income to the city. So I don't see a need for it. Now, maybe the city could do a better job of advertising that we have them over there for those people that do have an electric vehicle or a hybrid vehicle that needs it. But no, I don't see a need for this. Honestly, I don't see a need, not right now. I'm all in favor of jumping out in front of the curve, but I don't see the curve coming yet. You know, the people that are buying these hybrids and these electric vehicles have the ability to buy an adaptation so they can hook to their home and charge their vehicles there. It's not that much more of an increased cost. I just don't see a need for us to be dictating to a developer that's building condominiums or apartments that you have to put an EV charging station in your parking lot that nobody's gonna use. It's gonna be ended up using as Joe Smith's Ford truck that spews diesel because he can't park it anyplace else. I just don't see the need for this. I'm honest with you. I just don't see the need. Not at this point.
I appreciate your honesty.
I don't think we've had too many of our recent plans that would have required this at this point because they've been too small, correct?
250,
Right, I think we've had, what, one maybe?
I would say there's a couple of the,
One or
a
two.
couple being recent within the last couple of years that I have seen that
I was thinking
are at the
last year.
scale that they would require it. But for the most part, no.
I was thinking in the last year, maybe one.
Yeah, there are very few developments that have required.
Right.
Like, let's say two EV chargers would be about, if we're rounding up, we're looking at somewhere around 400 parking spots, and very few have had that happen. Now,
because we're only talking
just in general, as a rule of thumb, it's something that we would see very rarely, and this is on the scale of much larger developments, or if like larger commercial developments.
Right.
Not that we wouldn't be requiring existing parking lots like Walmart.
Right. We're not retro.
But were something like Walmart to come in again, this is something that would be especially applicable.
Right, or Fry's.
To that, yeah. Like the parking lots that have, when we're reaching up to 1,000 parking stalls, just as we were breaking down the different study, because we want to know if how often this would be applicable, and also how often it would be considered a cost burden. So staff.
Yeah, I just
staff
wanted to put it
appreciates
more
all
in
the input.
context of
We
what
stand by our recommendation, at least as a minimum baseline that we don't believe is invasive or demanding, especially as these different cost opportunities and the incentives and the like have become apparent.
Although with your rounding rules, wouldn't it really apply to 126? Because you're
Yeah, I would believe so. But even then, I made that statement in recognition of that most of the projects that we've received, I would say, are anywhere between 75 to 100 that we've seen. There have been some that have exceeded that, and keeping that in mind, I still think it's just 2 or 3 that we've seen recently. I can think of the residences and some of them, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been minimal at this point, so,
I think it's good to stay ahead of the curve.
yeah. It's better to be ahead than behind.
Yeah, because you can't, it's very difficult to put them in once you've got all your infrastructure done.
And I think as you've shown, it's very little, especially with the rebates offered, very little impact if they do their homework. You've done most of it for them.
Well, looks like with a, even with a $7,000 commercial installation, you get $1,500 back per port. So if they put in 2 ports, that's $3,000 back. They've invested $4,000. That's not a lot of money to ask.
No, on the scale of the development, it's a drop in the bucket.
No, it's not. We're not asking for a lot of money to be spent.
And we understand for sure, there's definitely debate regarding need. We are on the cautious side, I would say, as planners, just making sure that we don't while we don't believe that this is a burdensome request, we also don't want to end up in a situation where there is nothing.
Right.
So,
Well, it's one thing to drive a mile or two across town to drop your vehicle off to charge it for a day versus parking it somewhere in your parking lot where you can walk back across to your home. And I think that's what we gotta look at too. It's where you live versus a mile or two down the road that you might have to line up a ride.
I don't know. I have to go down the street to the gas station.
Yeah, but you're not there for 8 hours.
I don't know, you ever seen her pull up?
I just don't see this as something that we need to get involved with. I can understand putting it at someplace like Fry's. But somebody's apartment complex or condos, if the people's gonna buy an electric vehicle, they're gonna be able to charge it somehow.
Well, not
They
in,
have
not
that
in a
option.
multi-family though.
They have that option. If we're talking about somebody residing in this city, in this community, okay, if you have a traveler and he's coming from the lakes and he's got an electric vehicle and he's getting, oh crap, I'm getting low. We've got the MGC over here, which is, I'm pretty sure, quite empty. You know, if we could locate signage or say, hey, we've got a space over there, bring your credit card.
Yeah, as I've expressed before, the multifamily is the one that causes
Yeah.
me the issues here because, you know, particularly multifamily where you have garages. You know, they're gonna be charging in their garage. They're not gonna use a central facility.
If they're allowed to put one up. Because they might not own that property.
What if it's a rental?
If it's a rental, they might not be able to modify it.
Yeah.
Uh,
And if you've got two-story, if you've got units on top and units on the bottom, the top unit may not have access to that garage. And we've seen lines in other cities, lines coming out of windows, of top units going down to plug in their electric vehicle. This at least gives a vehicle the opportunity, and a developer, if they feel like this is not something they want to do, they can protest it, and we can all talk about it, you know? It's not as though it's carved in stone. We've changed things for other developers. We'd certainly consider that.
Right.
So it's just a, hey, here it is. We're going towards the future. We understand that electric vehicles are something that's coming, and if you have so many units, a gross amount of units, then here's the opportunity. And SRP will help you pay for it.
Think we're good?
This and the previous one are gonna be in the same amendment, or they're gonna be separate?
so, at the time of the public hearing, with the ordinance, they'll be merged so that and the idea being is that within the changes that I have made, we've reorganized the section, you know, changed different things around. And were we to adopt that, technically Erica's amendment would either replace that a second time, or we just kind of end up with a mismatch. So if her item is good to move forward, if she needs a further update, then we would wait for that to be clean and polished before we would present them together as a public hearing, because we don't want to have to, you know, dissect and tear different parts apart when we're good with one thing to move forward. We would like both of the items to be good to move forward, and because of the way that the system is of adopting amendments, text amendments, it was just a cleaner process, both legally and in terms of the logistics, to have the actual text amendment ordinance just replace the whole thing at once rather than to replace individual pieces, just because sometimes, you know, you have a mismatch. So
Because it just worries me a little bit that especially the horse trailer issue, that's probably might have a lot of pushback, where this one's not really gonna have any issues come and arise from it.
I understand that too.
So I don't know, obviously it's gonna be more work. I don't know if it's too much work, if it's possible when that comes to be, because I feel like that is gonna be it already is, and that's gonna be a huge there's gonna be a lot of headbutting on that one. And I think it might be cleaner if they were separate, when it does come to voting
Yeah,
for it.
Commissioner Callan, that is definitely noted. So just so the commission knows, we are shooting for June 13th for public hearing for both these items, especially since the last item previous to Nick seemed pretty non-controversial. But they will be heard in two separate cases, but hopefully voted on the same night. So that will help alleviate, kind of the mismatch that Commissioner Callan has pointed out.
But whether or not here, or even when it goes up to council,
Yes,
it might
absolutely noted.
probably be a lot of.
Right.
Of course.
It'd be a shame to see it all fail because of.
Right,
that.
I understand what you're saying,
absolutely. Yeah, but it's a lot cleaner to make one change instead of two.
Yeah, but if necessary, we can make two. Like, there's nothing stopping one way or another. That is what we had proposed, just as a matter of streamlining it, but if necessary, for sure, we can just make that modification, just in terms of scheduling, Any other questions, Commissioner?
I have none.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So no new business?
No, sir.
Any information reports? No, I have none. No. Director report?
Yes, sir. Cindy, would you please pass this to the commission?
Can we have a copy of this, Rudy?
Copy of what?
What's on the screen?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Oh, well, heck. Sorry.
Oh, you talk about a man ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I have the last one still, so.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, at your last work session, one of the items that was requested of staff is that we give you a little update on some of the projects that we've approved over the last couple of years, so I'll kind of go through these quickly. Of course, Old West Highway Village is the development that's on the south side of Old West Highway, about 800 feet east of Royal Palm Road. That was approved by City Council for 107 2- and 3-story townhome development. The plats were presented, the pre-plat was presented for 106 townhome units. The pre-plat expires on November 1st unless the developer requests an extension and it's approved by council, because this was a rezoning. We are still waiting for the final plat submittal on that particular development. The Villas on Superstition, that's the one that we hear a lot about. It's at the northeast corner of Superstition and Main. Once again, that was the rezoning approved by council back in May of 2020. 56 one-story rental apartments. They are under construction, although construction has been very slow. Most recently, we heard through one of our building inspectors that SRP has approved their plan, transformer pads and underground conduit is being installed, and then they need to finish. Most of the buildings, I think, are done except for the painting and the interiors, and of course, they need to install their landscaping, their driveways, their paint the buildings, that kind of thing. So they're moving, but they're moving very slowly. Ironwood Station, southeast corner of Superstition and Ironwood, that was rezoned and platted for a 96-unit 2-story townhome subdivision. Plat has been approved, construction documents approved. They have had some delays. We're not sure if it's because of market or because of materials or because of they're waiting for better interest rates. They've done a lot of groundwork out there, but then it kind of came to a stop. It's all fenced off. Hopefully that project will move forward soon. Galen's Garden was a planned development amendment to add 7 apartment units to an existing small little 6-unit complex. They did submit construction documents back in August, but once again, they are also being slow. Documents were reviewed, and we're waiting on a second submittal, and as you can see, it's been quite the wait. The residences at Apache Trail we spoke about just a little bit ago. Southwest corner of Broadway and Tomahawk, proposed 201 attached and detached 1-story rental units. The property was sold after the rezoning was approved. The current developer, however, is moving forward. They're working on some flood zone issues. They're refining their engineering plans for construction document submittal. Architecture is also currently under review. So they are moving forward as far as we know. The Havenly, just down the street here, southwest corner, Superstition and Royal Palm, 166 single-family style detached one-story rental units, architectural concepts approved, building permits under review, a lot of site work underway. They have been making very steady progress at the Havenly Superstition. Goldfield Estates, down around Star and 28th, basically between Goldfield and Star on the south side of 28th. Rezoning approved, preliminary plat approved, 209 two-story townhome units. The final plat has been submitted and is almost ready to approve, so hopefully when we get that final plat approved, they'll start submitting their construction and drawings as well. The Enclave, southeast corner of Virginia and Rennick, 124 two-story rentals. There was a change of ownership on that one after rezoning, and they've kind of gone silent unless Nick knows something that I don't. But basically, we're waiting for them to turn in their construction plans. The Hamptons East at the northeast corner of Southern and Meridian, 195 one-story attached and detached rental apartment units. Once again, another project with a lot of steady construction. Over 60 units now actually occupied by residents. Many more units under construction. Sydney, are all the buildings actually constructed now?
All buildings are up, and as of this morning, 50% of the buildings are now complete. So they will be pursuing or offering those units for tenancy now.
So they're moving right along. Circle Trail Suites by the same people who did Villas on Superstition. Their conditional use permit was approved last August. Another 56 unit apartment rental development. We're waiting on those construction plans. Their their conditional use permit expires on August 23rd unless they request an extension, and the extension is granted by P&Z. Superstition Junction is at the southwest corner of Superstition and Palo Verde. They were approved back in October, 20 units, apartment rentals. There was a change of ownership after that one. CUP will expire on October 11th unless a CUP extension is requested and granted by P&Z. 94 West Roundup, right up the street here, across the street from the library. This was four plexes on 3 lots. In other words, one fourplex on one lot for a total of 3 lots. They have a lot of right-of-way issues to contend with, including abandonment of old easements, dedication of new easements, straightening out of the new street configuration, which has gone from a 66-foot easement to a 50-foot wide right-of-way. So there's a lot of engineering work going on that one. And while they are doing that, and while they are doing their lot line adjustments, because the way the lots are designed now is not the way they're going to be designed according to their plan, so there's a lot of groundwork going on with that one, but we don't have construction plans as of yet. The Becoming One wedding venue at Old West Highway and Star, approved last August. There's some site prep underway. I think they're doing some roof grading out there. Their improvement and architectural plans are also under review. Those are the projects that have come to you. I might have missed 1 or 2, but I think those are the main ones. In addition to that, there's a lot of things that have not come to you that are also going on. Gravity Energy Drinks, which is basically like a little coffee type of establishment. They're building a store next to the gas station at the southeast corner of West Apache Trail in Ironwood. Their permit is issued. They are doing another store at the northwest corner area of Baseline and Ironwood, right next to the new car wash down there. Aspen Dental, they've been under construction for a while now. I think they're almost done. There is also a 10-unit apartment complex on a property that was already zoned for apartments at the southwest corner of 20th and Coconino. They are under construction. Superstition Vista subdivision, which is that subdivision that's kind of out in the wilderness there, south of Baseline and South Cortez Road. They are also under construction. I believe we have approved their 10 models. Okay, so they are finally under construction, new owners. After that project was rezoned and approved and platted there's a new ownership entity there as well. U-Haul, you see U-Haul at Idaho and US 60, moving along on their construction. In our master plan communities, D.R. Horton, northeast corner area of Ray and Meridian, basically between Meridian and Ironwood. 10 subdivision plats have been approved. Over 200 permits have been issued. There are dozens of homes under construction. Hope you have had the opportunity to tour that community because they are really moving. Brookfield Residential on the east side of Ironwood, north of Ray. 5 of their plats have been approved, and we are currently reviewing 2 multifamily development proposals. And kind of last is a long dormant project. Commissioner Barker may remember Aziz Halal, who got that little 29-unit townhome development approved just a little bit north of Apache Trail on the east side of Ironwood. That project was zoned, it was platted, and then it sat for about 15 years or more. Well, there's a new owner there, and we are now reviewing their architectural plans. Huh?
He has a wall up.
He's got a wall.
Yeah, he put a
He's
wall
got some interior streets. He built it all himself, and I'm not kidding about that.
No, I know.
And there's some other stuff going on. For example, well, the Lennar subdivision is all done. Goldview. We're working with some folks on 2 possible auto zone stores that have gone through our preliminary development review process. Of course, Axiom, the behavioral health facility, got approved by council not too long ago. We've got a Francis and Sons car wash that is proposing to move in next to the Dutch Brothers, and Superstition Skies and Phillies have some new owners, and we're working with them on fixing up those places and hoping bringing those long-established landmarks back to life.
That will be good.
And that's my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Sue?
Thank you very much, Rudy.
Thanks, Rudy.
You're welcome.
Question for you, on where there's been a change in ownership, were those planned beforehand? In other words, we went through the approval process knowing that there was going to be a change in ownership, or?
No.
We asked one of them, we asked them point blank up
Right.
here if they were planning on actually going through with the project or they were gonna sell it. Oh, yeah, we're going through with it, oh, yeah.
That happens sometimes. But they are, as long as they don't change the plan, as long as they, go through with the original plan, we're okay.
True.
If they want to change the plan, they got to come back to you.
All right, selection of meeting dates, times, location, purpose. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Barker?
I move a regular meeting be held at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023, in the City Council chambers located at 300 East Superstition Boulevard, Apache Junction.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Rudy, roll call, please.
Commissioner Begeman.
Yes.
Commissioner Barker.
Yes.
Commissioner Callan.
Yes.
Chairman Hanchey.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Gage.
Yes.
Commissioner Cantwell.
Yes.
Commissioner Shanebeck.
Yes.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rudy. I now adjourn
You can't
the
say
meeting
nothing
at 8:53 p.m.